Hello everyone, and welcome to a brief introductory video to go over some of the general education documents that I've created to help us move through the new SUNY general education requirements with the most recent revision. So just a reminder that these new SUNY Gen Ed outcomes go into effect in the fall of 2023 for our transfer programs, our AA and AS programs, and then in the fall of 2024 for the AAS and certificate programs. So this is an Excel sheet that I created with a whole bunch of tabs. I'll go through it in just a second. I want to go down here to this tab where I have new Gen Ed outcomes, and if you click on it, what I've done here is aligned the new Gen Eds and put them up against what we are currently using for the Gen Ed categories and the language of each of the outcomes. So there are still 10 categories of general education. However, some of them have adjusted, and I'll go through that in a second. And there are still 2 competencies, which are critical thinking and reasoning and information literacy. So those have not changed. I want to just start with these first 2. And the first 4 here are required. Okay, so communication, written and oral. And I'll point out that if you look at it seems as though it's a slight change, right? Written and oral from basic communication. The thing to pay attention to with this change is oral. Was one that was not specified explicitly in the current Gen Ed outcomes. It is specified explicitly in the new ones. So many programs are already measuring oral communication either with a course requirement, English 105 speech fundamentals, or within a program, there's a presentation assignment that is being assessed and used to measure that. However, for programs where it's not explicitly stated, that's one area on which you'll want to focus. All of our programs currently measure written communication at a baseline through the requirement of English 101. So this next category is brand new. It's diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. And you can see here there are very specific outcomes that are associated with this. And so while many programs currently measure outcomes similar here, many may not do so formally. And so this is an area which you'll want to focus when you meet with your departments to look at these new alignments. The other 2 required categories across all programs are math and natural science, and there aren't huge changes with these outcomes. You can look at this in more detail later, but very similar. So all programs require these 4, and then for our transfer programs, the number hasn't changed. It's 7 out of 10 categories, and that's what we currently have. And for the applied programs, our AAS and certificate programs, it's 4 out of the 10 categories. So this tab is new Gen Ed outcomes, and again, it just aligns the new language and shows you the comparison with the older language, which is what we're currently using. So I want to go down here, and on the worksheets that I send to you, it will not say demo, it will say program outcomes, but for the purposes of this video, I've pulled out 2 programs so that I can walk you through what I think will be the process you might want to consider using if you use these documents. So for each of your departments, I have created separate spreadsheets with just the program learning outcomes that you are responsible for. So you won't see the entirety of the college's programs, just those that fall under your departments. And all of these sheets are aligned the same. This first column has your program learning outcome. The second column are the current alignments with SUNY Gen Ed. And then this third column are some potential options you might want to think about with the new language. And in some cases, it's really clear if it matched up with the old language, it probably matches up with the new language. In other cases, you may want to consider a more direct alignment between your program outcomes and the SUNY Gen Eds, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So I decided to start walking us through the humanities and social science program because there's so much alignment with our liberal arts programs and Gen Ed. And so as you can see here in this first one, this is the program outcome that aligns with humanities. And the recommendation is that you consider continuing to keep that alignment because it matches the new language as well. So you'll notice in this third column, these categories are hyperlinked. So if you click on it, it brings you to another sheet within this Excel document. And this is the new language for each outcome. So all of these tabs down here each have their own sheet so that you can look at the new language, look at the courses you currently have that meet the Gen Ed outcome now. And if there are no changes that are being made, you can simply put NC. And then I'm also asking that you look at the assessment method. How are you measuring this? What tool are you using? And if that has changed, please indicate the new measurement here. If there's no change, you can put NC. So again, you can move through this document with these tabs. I'll go back to the demo for just a moment. And you can see some of the changes here. This used to be Other World Civilizations. It is now World History and Global Awareness. So you could click on that. And you could look at, I'll make that a little bigger here. You can look at the new language, do the courses that you currently have aligned in your program, continue to align, and are you going to change your assessment? And for those of you not familiar with Excel, you can move through all these tabs with these arrows over here to the left. So the liberal arts courses, there's already a lot of natural alignment with SUNY Gen Ed, and that makes sense. What I want to do is walk through a non-transfer program that may not have as much alignment in the program learning outcomes as the liberal arts, so you can kind of see how this might work. So we'll start with the AAS Business Administration degree. You can see we have a number of program learning outcomes that directly correspond with what we want students to know when they exit the program, in addition to SUNY Gen Ed, and of course, our college-wide goals. And so here I have the current alignments with Gen Ed, and you'll see that there's only one that is directly aligned at this point. Information literacy, we know that CIS 130 is a requirement. We measure information literacy in that course. And again, you can click here and it would take you to that page with the new language. So up here, you'll see that I've put in a recommendation of communication here. And that is because Kim Duffy and I have had conversations around looking at more direct alignment between some of the business program outcomes, like this one, effective business communication. It would make sense that you look to see whether or not those business outcomes also align with the SUNY Gen Ed for communication. So again, if you click on that, you can look and say, does, which of those courses measures these outcomes, and you could indicate that here. So these are meant to be working documents. You can insert your information right here, save it, and then send it back to me. And that way we can start to put these changes together as we move through the approval process next fall. The other area that I wanted to look at is down here for each of the programs. In addition to the program learning outcomes, I've included the categories and courses that are correspond to the current SUNY Gen Eds based on the degree program requirements in the worksheets. So while you may not have a communication alignment up in your program learning outcomes, we know that every degree program requires English 101, so that takes care of basic communication. So I've indicated that here. Math, Many programs have a specific math requirement. In this case, it's any SUNY Gen Ed for math, but it might say Math 121 or 129. Same with natural science, and then information literacy. So this is what's currently aligned, and I just wanted that in there so that you didn't look at a program and say, oh, how come we don't have, or how come we only have 2 Gen Ed alignments? You actually have the ones you need, but they're not necessarily aligned with your program learning outcomes. So there are some opportunities for overlap as we make these changes, an overlap between program outcomes and SUNY Gen Ed outcomes. In some cases, that will work well. In other cases, you may need to keep these specific requirements in the worksheet in addition to what you have in your program outcomes. So I'm hoping that this will be helpful for you. There are a couple of other documents that you'll want to have, and I will include all of these in folders that I'll share with you for each department. So the other documents I think you'll want to have handy, and I sent this out before the last chairs and directors meeting. This is a list of questions that you can move through as you meet with faculty. Look at the current list of general education outcomes. Do you want to make any changes? These are the instructions that I just went over on the Excel sheet. I've highlighted here the 2 categories that have major changes, and then some alignments with those competencies, critical thinking and information literacy, which we don't always spell out explicitly, and this is a good opportunity for us to do that. These other 2 questions down here, you do not need to address now, but you may want to since you'll have course outlines that you'll be looking at. This may be the time to review course caps. As you might remember, all of our course outlines have course caps on there as the official course caps. Now, sometimes those change because of room assignments. We know we changed them during COVID because we wanted to reduce the number of students in online sections, and we also wanted to reduce the number of on-campus students per class for distancing. So while you have those outlines open, it might be a good time to take a look at those course caps and see if the department is recommending any changes. Also, many of our course objectives may not be worded with measurable language, and so you may want to review those course objectives, and I will include some lists of outcomes that you can use, some language, some verbs you can associate with those outcomes. So, and feel free to add or adjust any of these questions as it might be helpful for you related to your program. The other document you will want to have handy is the current list of approved general education courses by category. Okay, so you all know the categories associated with your departments. Take a look and see if these still apply. And this is what you can use to determine if you're going to make changes or not. So for instance, in the humanities, we have a lot of options. Do all of these still meet the new language or not? Same with natural science and the social sciences. The last document that I think you will find helpful, that I'll include in the folders for each department, is the actual memorandum to presidents that came out from the SUNY Board of Trustees. And again, you don't have to read this verbatim, but I want to just show you some guidance areas that may be helpful as you're looking through the program changes. So for instance, under this first one, communication, here's the language that I included in that tab of the new Gen Ed outcomes. And then here's the guidance. Do you want to look at a combination of 2 courses? So for those programs that have English 101, you've covered written, and English 105, speech fundamentals. You have both of the outcomes for communication covered, if that's the case. Or perhaps there's a single course that integrates both. English 101 does have a presentation component, but it's not always measured explicitly. So that's something that you want to look at within your program. There is guidance for the new diversity outcome. Okay, and you can look through these for all of the rest of the corresponding categories. The last item that I'll call your attention to is the procedural guidance that SUNY has given us. And as I mentioned in the last faculty meeting where we talked about this, SUNY no longer requires us to submit courses for their approval. We can do that in-house. However, they do want to see that we have a process for that approval and that we're not just assuming that, if a department says they put this course forward, they do want another set of eyes on it, just so that they can be sure there's some checks and balances. So you can read through this. It may be helpful for you to give you a background. A lot of thought went into this, and you can see that from the 20 pages that's included in this memorandum to presidents. So I will include all of these documents in a folder by department, and I will include the course outlines for all the courses that currently meet these SUNY General Education outcomes. So my hope is that you don't have to go digging for all of this information. It will all be in a folder. If anything's missing, please let me know. And the last thing I'll say is that these are meant to be working documents. Please adjust them if you think that would be helpful for you as you move through each of your respective programs. So again, just don't hesitate to reach out with suggestions, changes. I'm sure we'll make many of them as we move through this process over the next year. All right, thank you.